Welcome to the golden age of cinematic chaos. In the 1970s, Hollywood unleashed a wave of disaster films that had audiences on the edge of their seats in sheer terror and excitement. From catastrophic earthquakes and towering infernos to high-flying peril and deadly avalanches, these movies defined a decade and changed the film industry forever. Today we're diving into the most epic disaster films of the 1970s, including classics like Airport, The Poseidon Adventure, The Towering Inferno, and many more. Buckle up and get ready for a thrilling journey through the cinematic disasters that captivated a generation. Growing up in the 1970s, I spent every spare moment I had going to the movies. And aside from horror movies being a favorite genre of mine, the era of the disaster movies was one of my most favorites. The first one I ever saw was The Poseidon Adventure. My older brother's girlfriend took me to see it, and we missed like the first 30 minutes of the movie. So by the time we arrived, the ship was already upside down, but that didn't stop me from enjoying every single frame of that picture. Naturally, we stayed and watched the first half we missed on the next showing, but I was already a fan of Irwin Allen because of Lost in Space. So this was a real treat. From the cast to John Williams' music, and of course the Oscar-winning song The Morning After by Maureen McGovern, suffice it to say I was officially hooked on the coming genre of the disaster era of 1970s cinema. So let's jump in with the film that started it all, Airport. Directed by George Seaton and based on Arthur Haley's novel Airport, it takes place during a snowstorm at a busy airport where a man down on his luck, played by Van Heflin, threatens to blow up a transatlantic flight. Featuring an ensemble cast led by Burt Lancaster, Dean Martin, George Kennedy, and Helen Hayes, who won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, Airport was a box office smash and earned 10 Academy Award nominations. Intertwining 7 stories around the main plot create a rich tapestry of drama and suspense. Airport was a perfect start of the 1970s with solid action and great storytelling. Little did they know they had just created a new genre in cinema history. The Poseidon Adventure. It's 1972, and Irwin Allen has taken Paul Gallico's novel by the same name and put together an all-star cast, combining the talents of 15 Academy Award winners with the famous tagline, Hell Upside Down. On New Year's Eve, luxury ocean liner the SS Poseidon is struck by a 90-foot tidal wave and capsized, trapping all survivors underwater. Through the determination of Reverend Scott, played by Gene Hackman, he makes a plea to anyone willing to listen that the only way they're going to survive is to save themselves. It's a classic tale of survival at sea. Like with 1970's Airport, The Poseidon Adventure combines several individual storylines of the main characters and how they all intersect on the night of the disaster. Gene Hackman and Ernest Borgnine lead a stellar cast of Shelley Winters, Jack Albertson, Stella Stevens, Pamela Sue Martin, Eric Shea, Roddy McDowall, Red Buttons, and Carol Lindley on a treacherous claustrophobic setting of the upside-down ship in an attempt to find a way out. Nominated for 9 Academy Awards and 2 wins, the film's groundbreaking special effects and intense action sequence made it a massive hit, and it remains one of the most beloved disaster films of all time. It's 1974 and my personal favorite of the genre. Irwin Allen's perfect follow-up to The Poseidon Adventure is The Towering Inferno. Boasting another all-star cast leading with Paul Newman and Steve McQueen, the story set in San Francisco and centers around the dedication ceremony of the world's tallest building and a party set on the very top floor when a fire breaks out 54 floors below. The tagline, "One tiny spark becomes a night of blazing suspense." Directed by John Gillerman and Irwin Allen directing the climax sequence, firefighters at the time were praising Irwin Allen's attention to detail and realism when it came to fighting fires in a high-rise building. With a star-studded cast of names like William Holden, Faye Dunaway, Robert Wagner, Jennifer Jones, Richard Chamberlain, Robert Vaughn, Fred Astaire, it was the first time ever 2 major studios collaborated on a film project. 20th Century Fox, which was Allen's home studio, and Warner Brothers. The film was based on two novels that had come out at the same time, The Tower by Richard Martin Stern and The Glass Inferno by Thomas N. Scorsese. Warner Brothers had bought the rights for The Tower in a bidding war between Warner's, Fox, and Columbia. Columbia dropped out when the price went over $200,000. Then, 8 weeks later, The Glass Inferno was submitted to Fox, and Allen, after reading it, realized it was the same character types, same locale, same outcome. He paid $400,000 for the book rights. However, Allen was afraid Warner Brothers would start production on theirs, and there would be two high-rise fire movies at the same time. So, to circumvent that, Allen convinced the studio heads to join forces and split costs and make a film like never before. The Towering Inferno cost the studios $14.3 million and raked in $203.3 million in worldwide box office. In today's money, that would be over $1 billion. 1974 was at the apex for disaster films, with Universal Pictures getting in on the act with their own star-studded cast for Earthquake, starring Charlton Heston, George Kennedy, Ava Gardner, Lauren Green, and Genevieve Bujold. For a kid who loved movies, this was like being let loose in a candy store. Not only did Earthquake come out in 1974, but it was in the theater at the same time as Towering Inferno. So by December, audiences were getting a double dose of disaster movies. Released November 15, 1974, and directed by Mark Robson, with screenplay written by George Fox and Godfather author Mario Puzo. This wasn't just going to be another disaster movie, this was going to be an event, as Universal was introducing its newest film sensation, Sensurround, which were just large speakers at the front of the theaters, and on cue, they would rumble to life, giving the audience the experience of the earthquake on screen. For some, it was really cool, but if you were in a multiplex and watching Godfather Part 2, you wouldn't be able to hear a thing for about 15 minutes. Following the same type of formula of airport storytelling arcs, Earthquake follows the individual storylines of Charlton Heston and his troubled marriage to Ava Gardner, his affair with widow Genevieve Bujold, and struggles with the sympathetic father-in-law played by Lauren Green. George Kennedy, a cop who was tired of doing the right thing, fighting for justice, only to be hamstrung by police politics.
And he almost got away because some Peckerwood rich man's whore in a cop's uniform was worried about a hedge.
Richard Roundtree coming off his success of Shaft as an Evel Knievel type of stunt performer, with crazy Marjoe Gordner, who's obsessed with Victoria Principal, and John Williams doing double duty composing not only Earthquake, but also The Towering Inferno in the same year. With a budget of $6.6 million, the film raked in an impressive $167.4 million. The disaster film genre had turned into a goldmine for movie studios. While the title calls it Airport 1975, it was actually the first of three major disaster films released in 1974, hitting the box office on October 18, 1974, followed by Earthquake on November 15, 1974, and The Towering Inferno just in time for Christmas on December 16, 1974. Universal Pictures was coming out with a 1-2 punch and giving Charlton Heston and George Kennedy overtime, starring in both Airport 75 and Earthquake. Like the original film Airport, with its multiple storylines of the passengers, and George Kennedy repeating his original role of Joe Petroni, this time the main story centers around a 747 being struck by a smaller plane in a mid-air collision, forcing stewardess Karen Black to have to fly the plane. Of course, she just happens to be the girlfriend of Charlton Heston in the film. Another all-star cast featuring Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., Roy Thinnes, Sid Caesar, Gloria Swanson, Myrna Loy, Linda Blair, Helen Reddy, and Dana Andrews. While critical reception was harsh, the box office said otherwise. And on a budget of $3 million, it grossed worldwide $103 million, making it the seventh highest grossing film of 1974. After a stellar year for the genre, Universal Pictures continued and produced The Hindenburg, based on an actual event of the airship's destruction in May 1937, and a book written in 1972 by Michael M. Mooney. Director Robert Wise of Day the Earth Stood Still and West Side Story fame took the helm. Another all-star cast featuring George C. Scott, Anne Bancroft, Charles Durning, William Atherton, Gig Young, and Roy Thinnes. The story centers around an espionage plot to bring down Hitler's symbol of Nazi power and show the world there is a resistance to the things going on in Germany prior to the war. Originally, Robert Wise had planned to shoot the entire film in black and white, but the studio fought against that. But they did relent for the explosion and crash sequence to be shot in black and white, while intercutting actual footage from the crash that was captured during the actual event. On a budget of $15 million, it did bring in almost double its budget at $27.9 million, but by now the formula was starting to wane with audiences as just another disaster film. It's 1976, and now international studios are jumping in on the disaster film genre with The Cassandra Crossing. Produced by Sir Lou Grade and Carlo Ponti, the husband of Sophia Loren, which explains her starring role, with another all-star cast of international celebrities featuring the aforementioned Sophia Loren, Richard Harris, Burt Lancaster, Ava Gardner, Martin Sheen, O.J. Simpson, and Lee Strasberg. Not sure if producers thought by putting some talent from previous disaster pictures it might help sell to the international audience, but the real bulk of the story falls on Richard Harris, Burt Lancaster, and Sophia Loren. When a terrorist group attacks the International Health Organization and is exposed to a possible virus of germ warfare, the lone terrorist stows away on the train headed for Stockholm. He's later discovered, and soon it's believed that he may have infected the entire train, and the train is now a danger to all. The film unfortunately was not well received, and critics hated it, with many vitriolic reviews, with some calling the premise downright stupid. Interestingly enough, the film was directed by George Cosmatos, who would later direct First Blood and Tombstone, although many believe Kurt Russell actually directed Tombstone, with George's name as director in title only. It's Airport 1977. So the Airport franchise has gone from mad bombers to mid-air collisions to now art thieves crashing in the Bermuda Triangle. I remember going to this movie opening weekend and how it was sold out. My brother and his wife and I got the last 3 seats in the very front row. For me, I love this movie. It was exciting from start to finish, and it was the second time I'd ever seen a movie where the audience cheered and applauded. The first time was Jaws. With the disaster genre now on its downtrend, surprisingly, Airport 77 was well received by audiences, with another all-star cast featuring Jack Lemmon, who said he was flat broke and needed this movie, Brenda Vaccaro, Darren McGavin, Jimmy Stewart, George Kennedy once again as Joe Petroni, Christopher Lee, Lee Grant, and even Olivia de Havilland and Joseph Cotton. The whole concept of the plane crashing into the Bermuda Triangle not only added to the mystery of that whole subject, but the claustrophobia of survivors being trapped underwater essentially turned Airport 77 into an airplane version of the Poseidon Adventure, only not upside down. This was pure entertainment movie escapism, and with a budget of $6 million, Universal once again cashed in with $91 million at the box office. This would mark the last of the fairly good movies in the genre. From here on, it would be pretty grim. The Swarm, 1978. Irwin Allen returns to the genre he himself virtually created. Often referred to as the master of disaster, he definitely lost his touch with 1978's The Swarm. As a kid during the 70s, we had heard about the killer African bees and how they would eventually arrive to the USA and kill us all. These are the same rumors as kids we used to believe, like how if you drank 7-Up and Pop Rocks, it would cause your stomach to burst. Sadly, not even the master of disaster or an all-star cast could make this film work. The premise of killer bees attacking a military outpost and a family on a farm to a local flower show in the town center begins a marathon of bad ideas on how to stop and destroy the killer bees. Featuring Michael Caine, Richard Widmark, and many other disaster film alumni from Towering Inferno, Airport 77, Richard Chamberlain, Olivia de Havilland, Henry Fonda, and Fred MacMurray in his final film. The film was the first of 3 final Irwin Allen movies that would sound the death blows of the disaster genre. Beyond the Poseidon Adventure, 1979. So what do you do when your movie about killer bees dies at the box office? You go back to an earlier success and kill it as well. Irwin Allen decided to return with Beyond the Poseidon Adventure, starring Michael Caine, Sally Fields, Telly Savalas, Carl Malden, Peter Boyle, Angela Cartwright of Lost in Space, Jack Warden, Slim Pickens, and Shirley Jones. We return to the Poseidon, and another small band of survivors are trying to escape the capsized luxury liner, forced to fight not only against the sinking of the ship, but now pirates who are after plutonium stored on board the ship along with gold. The film looks more like a bad TV movie than a feature film, and it's surprising with so many talented cast members, the dialogue is boring and uninteresting. At a budget of over $10 million, the film only returned $2.1 million, making it a certified box office failure. The genre would end the decade on a down note for sure. However, it would not be Irwin's final try. He'd try once more and kick off 1980 with When Time Ran Out. Sadly, the title for When Time Ran Out also mirrored the end of the disaster genre and would be Irwin Allen's final feature film. Once again, Allen tried the formula of an all-star cast and lots of explosions. But even with names like Paul Newman and William Holden, who both starred in the blockbuster Towering Inferno, couldn't save this movie. The plot centers around an active volcano on an island where mega-wealthy William Holden has a luxury hotel and wants to make Jacqueline Bisset his seventh wife. But of course she's in love with Paul Newman, who keeps warning of the impending volcano's eventual eruption. The supporting cast reunites Ernest Borgnine and Red Buttons from Poseidon Adventure and includes Burgess Meredith, Alex Karras, James Franciscus, Barbara Carrera, and Pat Morita. As an avid fan of Irwin Allen since childhood and his movies, this film came and went, and I had never even heard of it until like 20 years later. Critics hated the film, and with a budget of $20 million, it only returned $3.8 million at the box office. It was clear the disaster genre was over, not only for the studios, but for Irwin Allen as well. I saw the film on YouTube about 2 years ago and found it very hard to watch. It just seems like a really bad made-for-television movie, with obvious soundstage sets doubling as outdoor locations. And you can tell the actors just seem bored. It's a shame to see the talent of so many box office champions reduced to not even a glimmer of what had once been. But before we go, here's a look at other disaster film mentions you may or may not have heard of. Avalanche with Rock Hudson and Mia Farrow. Tidal Wave, a Japanese disaster film made in 1973 and re-released in 1975, adding Lauren Green as the only American in the film.
The entire country will break apart and be swept into the sea.
I guess they were going for that post-earthquake audience. Meteor in 1979 with an all-star cast of Sean Connery, Natalie Wood, Brian Keith, and Carl Malden. Juggernaut in 1974 with Richard Harris, Anthony Hopkins, Freddie Jones, Ian Holm, and directed by Richard Lester of Beatles fame. The Big Bus. Attempting to cash in on the disaster genre comes a comedy movie about a nuclear-powered passenger bus and a madman called Iron Man because he's in an iron lung. He wants to stop the bus at all costs. It's a bad movie, but it's fun in its own way. Starring Joseph Bologna, Stockard Channing, Ned Beatty, Larry Hagman, and Ruth Gordon, just to name a few. And finally, Drive-In, a 1976 movie that centers around the exploits at a movie drive-in, where the film on the screen is called Disaster 76 and parodies all the big disaster movies of the time. There are no names in the cast. It seems like someone just decided to produce their own low-budget, locally made movie and try and cash in on the disaster genre while it was still hot. And that's our tour of the genre that once was king of the 1970s cinema. Do you remember seeing any of these films when you were growing up? Let us know, and thanks for watching.